Hey, it's Dr. DeCubellis here from Main Street Chiropractic. Today I am at Humidor of Lisle with Tammi, and we want to talk a little bit about what they do and really what they offer because it's pretty amazing. So Tammi, thanks for having me out here today.
Well, thank you for showing up. I always love showing the space off to everybody, especially new people that have never been.
So first, there's a lot to offer here. So tell me kind of, when someone walks in, what are their different options? Obviously we have some cigars here, but it's so much more that's offered. So tell me a little bit about what you get at Humidor of Lisle.
Well, we always like to consider it a family here, and it really is like that fun family atmosphere. So when you come in, obviously cigars are our main pull and attraction, but you really get to come in and relax. A lot of our guys can do their business during the day, so they can work from their computers. We have a great Wi-Fi, and smoke their cigar, enjoy their work. We always have complimentary pop, water, and coffee. And then they can bring food in that they would like to, eat if they're going to have lunch, or if they want to bring a business partner in and they cater in lunch, we often do that for them too. And we have both a public and a private lounge area, so we're always have felt that we want to have a space for everybody. So we have private membership, so they can come in and enjoy the private area, which has pool tables, our poker room that we're in right now, media room, business lounge. But we have a public space too, because we know that we want to be a spot for everybody at every economic level, that they can come in and still enjoy a cigar.
Yeah, it's very nice, and we walked through a couple of rooms to even get to here. So let's start kind of at some basics, because I am definitely not an expert when it comes to cigars. So first of all, when we talk about cigars, the biggest thing is that when we come to that Humidor name, it talks about where the cigars are kind of stored, correct?
Correct.
So walk me through, explain why do they need to be stored in someplace special?
Yes, so a lot of people don't realize, cigars are different. A lot of people kind of equate cigarettes to cigars, and so there's definitely a misunderstanding there. So cigars are straight tobacco leaves. So when they grow the tobacco, it's these large leaves that they're actually growing. Each part of the tobacco plant has different leaves meant for different parts of the cigar. So because they are living leaves that are picked and dried and processed through that, they have to stay in that soft, just like here in Illinois in the fall, as the moisture stops and the leaves start to fall off, they dry out. So if a cigar is not properly kept in a humidor, they too will dry up, and then we call them kindling. You can just burn them. They say some people will bring us their humidor that they haven't maintained at home with a lot of dry cigars in there. You can bring them back to life, but you do lose a lot of the flavor. It's kind of like once you open a bottle of wine, there's a time frame that you want to drink it in. Once the cigars become dry, it will come back, but it's never quite what it used to be. But the nice thing about a cigar is if it's properly kept in a humidor, and it really kind of varies for how soft you like your cigar, between kind of like a 63 to, some people keep their humidors up to 70% humidity. They really like a soft smoke. And then the temperature needs to be in that kind of 65-degree range also. Then the cigar can stay good forever. It will never go bad. And that's why you'll hear people talk about, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger had like pre-embargo Cuban cigars that he had kept, people out in the cigar industry really enjoy things like that. And they keep because they were, in the humidor for that time frame, so they stayed okay. And the humidors can be super small ones. We've got fishermen that have these little tackle box humidors, which are great to carry a few. And then we obviously have walking humidors like we have in our store here.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's a good point. So if you properly maintain it, cigar lasts forever. There's no
Correct.
shelf life. Okay.
Yep.
So now, is there any difference as to, let's say, like if you buy a cigar or you buy a box of cigars, how long before you need to get them into a humidor?
I would say you don't ever want to take them out in essence. You can, you're going to buy a cigar, go to the golf course and smoke, you're fine. But after a couple of days, you're going to start losing that humidity, right? This is going to start coming out. There's little tricks to the trade too. So if you purchase cigars from us, and in most cigar establishments, they're going to put in a little plastic baggie. So sometimes if you're going to be gone for a few days, maybe you're traveling, and you don't have a travel humidor, you can pop in a little cotton ball that's not soaked, but has a little water. We always recommend distilled water, still bacteria issues, and you can kind of pop it in that baggie, and that usually kind of does the trick. It's a little
smart.
Poor man's humidor.
Yeah, okay, that's smart. Now let me ask you this. So let's say, because the thing with cigars, obviously, there's many different kinds and brands and flavors, and if you, is it okay to store different cigars in one humidor? How does that work? Does that affect flavor?
So it can affect flavor. So actually it's really funny. So I've been in the industry like 17, 18 years now. And about 15 years ago, we started seeing them cellophane. So before that, when we would order cigars and get them in from the companies, you open the boxes, all the cigars laid out, no cellophane on it. And then cellophane started getting introduced onto the cigars. And for a lot of cigar aficionados, it was kind of disappointing, like, oh, like they won't be able to mesh together. So when cigars sit on top of each other, they will actually blend in with their flavor. So if you're having cigars from the same box, you're just aging them and kind of enhancing their flavor is really what it does. And then if you have different cigars of different regions, different palates, they will actually, affect each other in that humidor box, so they can. But nowadays, almost all the cigars are cellophane, which means they're not going to actually get that part of it. Some of the great cigars that I enjoy are like the Davidoffs that come in the tubes and they're wrapped in cedar. Mm-hmm. So even though they're individually and they're wrapped individually, and that protects them, damaging, from getting damaged in shipping or anything like that. But because they're in a tube with cedar, not plastic cellophane, it actually enhances the aging process. So those are good picks.
Okay. So cigars then do age almost like wine, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So does that mean that, like wine, do cigars almost go up in value as they age?
Oh, yes.
Interesting, okay.
Yes.
So what's one of the most expensive cigars that you've seen sold locally?
Oh, well, there's easy, we have a cigar that sells for $600. And that's not even an aged cigar, it's just a limited edition cigar. But it has aged tobacco in it. People are it's the same to wine. I'm a cigar snob, but wine I'm very ignorant to. I know what I like, but I'm not very educated, and so I'm always kind of blown away with wine prices myself. Or I've gotten into whiskey, and you look at, I've got the whiskey magazine, and I'm like, $30,000 for a bottle of whiskey. Who's doing this? It blows my mind. But some people say the same thing. $600 for a cigar? Are you out of your mind? But for those who really this is their hobby and they have the luxury of having, that expendable amount of money to spend, then it is something that they really want to enjoy, something they want to go for.
Now, when we talk about different kinds of cigars, obviously you said there's different kinds of flavors. How does it work? Is it like different flavors by where they were made or how they were made or the actual tobacco leaf? How does that work?
Yes, so it is definitely regionally where they're grown. It's kind of like corn. I grew up in Burgundy, so corn is a big thing. Corn in different areas has different taste, and so tobacco is the same way. So really the three main countries are Honduras, Nicaragua, and Dominican. Those are where most of the tobacco comes from. And so they all have a different quality to the tobacco, and then amongst that, even the fields are planted in, which again, I like to equate it back to wine and chocolate and coffee. It's all the same thing, which is why the cigars pair so well with all those items. It's very much a similar process of, what countries they're in, what the soil is in the different areas that they're actually in, the sunlight they get, the water content they get, and then after that, that's your first kind of flavor. And then after that, it's the process they undergo after that. So how they're going to be aged out, what's the process of that. So a lot of people don't realize when you buy that cigar, it's taken a year to get to that cigar. They had to grow it, they had to harvest it, they had to procure it through the process of picking it and drying it and all of that, and then actually rolling it out and then shipping it here. So there's a long process, and that all affects the flavor of the cigar. And there are flavored cigars out there that are sprayed down with a flavor. And there's a market for everything, but we always tell people when you smoke those particular cigars, you need to be careful because it's such a small market, and you kind of ruin your palate a bit on it, and you have a hard time adjusting to the actual tobacco flavor of the normal cigars that aren't sprayed down. So that's something we always like to keep customers aware of.
Right, okay. Now, when it comes to, since there are different kinds of flavors and brands and all that stuff, have you noticed any kind of pattern with either seasons or events to where it's this type of cigar is more popular at this time, or any correlation, or is it pretty much people like what they like year round?
People have, it used to be that way. We used to sell boxes. People would come in and this is their cigar, they're gonna pick up a box of it and off they go. And it's changed. I actually stepped out of our retail side of our business for many years when I had our last two kids. And just in like that 5-year time frame coming back in, I came back into a much more educated cigar aficionados, our customers. All of a sudden, through the internet, through publications that are on there, and just through, I think, the culture, we're into experiences now, so people are really much more about educating themselves. That's where like the small breweries have come up, that whole experience of wanting to know more and more, and just takes a variance. So now customers are more apt to pick up a couple sticks here and there as to what they want. I think the one thing would be like during the golf season, some of my customers who maybe smoke a higher quality cigar, maybe drop down on the golf course because often they leave it on the green or they don't think about it as much, So I would say golfers in the golf season sometimes, maybe we sell a fewer of our middle grade cigars during the golf season just because during that time, again, that they're not able to sit and enjoy the cigar as much, but they still want to have a cigar on the golf course. But if it gets left on the green, they don't want to leave a $50 cigar on the green.
Right, that makes sense. Now, once someone has, let's say they've come in, they've tried a couple cigars, they find out what they like, and then they find out how often they're going to want to purchase them. Is it recommended that they just kind of come in and buy, or is it recommended that they put like an order in, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, what we really pride ourselves in our customer service and knowing our customers here. So when somebody comes in our store, we're going to talk to them. If they're a new customer, well, have they smoked at all? And we're going to make sure that we fit them where they belong. What's their price point? Everybody has a different price point, and we respect that. And then once we get to know the customer, we keep track of them in our database so that they can kind of come back and see what they've had, not had. What they don't like is just as important as to what they like. And once they do know what they like, we always say when we do events, which have not been as much as we like to, but we recommend buying in when there's a cigar you like and there's a discount given from the company. So that's them giving that great discount, buy in. Like that's a great time. And that's why our lounge members have, humidor small boxes, they're lockers that are humidified, and then they're able to make those larger purchases and save themselves a lot of money and then store them into their lockers.
That makes sense. All right, last question I have for you. Is there any difference when you have a cigar between lighting it with a match or a lighter, or is there any difference, and how does that work?
Okay, so it's like not the ultimate question, but definitely one that's always hit on. So technically, if you want to be like a true cigar snob, you will take a wooden match and you will actually light a piece of cedar, and then you will take that cedar that's lit and light your cigar with it. The cedar is the wood of cigars. It's where the wood that the cigars are aged on. And so you're going to maintain that flavor profile of the cigar. So that's for true snobs. I'm not that snobby, but I'm a little bit of a snob, and I do like matches. So sometimes I fight it out in the wind and go through a whole box, but I really do like matches. Ultimately, you don't want to use a big lighter. The gasoline will get on and you'll be smoking that. So we always, if you want to go to a clean butane, DuPont lighters are like the best known. When you open them up, they ping. So everybody knows the famous DuPont lighters from the cigar world. And those are really, if you're going to do a lighter, that's your best bet. But I love wooden matches, and they're cheap.
Right. Well, and it's just putting less other material into the cigar that you're going to be inhaling. So it makes sense. I just didn't know if that made sense in a real way.
Yes, no, it's true. So actually you would want to, so if you buy a box of cigars, they always come with a thin layer of cedar. So you can kind of just take pieces of that off, light it, and then light your cigar.
That makes sense. I was wondering what that was for.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I don't know if that's purposely or that's, come from that, but it's, something that people use.
Well, we covered a lot of, I think, good things for basis. New people coming in or not understanding what, really what the value of going into a humidor is for. But is there anything else you want to add, or anything I didn't ask that's kind of something we should talk about?
Everybody asks about Cuban cigars. So I always like to touch on Cubans. So I always say that if the United States ever banned champagne, everybody would want champagne because it's banned. Because us Americans love what we can't have. And so people always ask, are Cuban cigars the best? And they're a great cigar. There's ranges of quality of Cuban cigars, but typically they're fuller bodied cigars. So if you're not a fuller bodied smoker, they're not for you. And so I always say they're not for everybody. They're a selection amongst many. And I think Americans are just intrigued with it because they were banned for so long. Yeah,
that makes sense. And that's definitely the one that everyone's heard about, something with a Cuban cigar.
That's what people always whisper, do you have Cubans? Everybody wants to know.
Well, thank you for having me out here. The place is great. I think we got some good knowledge about what really goes on with not only cigars, but just the whole kind of thing and how they're upkept, because it's definitely not a cigarette. That's
No,
the thing.
no,
It's not a cigarette in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me. And you guys should stop by. They're right on Ogden in Lisle. Big building. It's hard to miss. So hopefully you guys will stop by and see Tammi.
Yes.
And thanks for watching.
Thanks.